Hey, we're going to have a Q&A at this time. And so if you will just, that was, so first of all, I would just want to say thank you so much for that. Such an inspiring message that Brother Marty has given to us, even in this extremely turbulent and difficult time. We know that God is with us, even among the wars and rumors of wars. So, but how about if you if you have, I'm sure many people have questions for Mr. Geimel, for Brother Marty, and if you can type them into the Q&A box, then I think we'll take turns reading them to Mr. Geimel, and he can answer them.
We do have pastors present, right? Maybe we can have the pastors answer the questions instead.
Oh, but I see that Mr. Gallarez, he's raising his hand. Maybe Mr. Gallarez would like to ask the question verbally.
Is it okay if it's verbal? Like, I'm not.
Oh, why not?
Oh, yes, yes. If you
Let's do
want the
that.
mic, we can give
Only
you
easy
the
questions.
He has a mic. Go ahead, Mr. Gallarez.
It's not really a question, but it's more on. I think I want to hear another approach from our speaker, Mr. Mary. Thank you for giving to us God's word tonight. With regards to being favored by God, the God's sovereignty, God's control. We all know that as Christians we accept that, and we are blessed by that. But then again, of course, we are called also to explain it to other people. Now there are times that as Christians we have this conversation like, nasunog yung isang street, praise God, hindi nadami ang church, talagang mahal ni Lord yung church. And then probably some people say, oh, so okay, kayo na lang lagi ang love ni Lord. Another thing most likely would be nagkaroon ng aksidente, and then praise God hindi kami nadami, and then just some people died. I think my question, my thing is, I just want to hear another approach probably on how we can be more sensitive in dealing with this kind of things, na para namang hindi tayo parang tayo lang love the Lord, tayo lang mahal ni Lord, tayo lang favor ni Lord. While we understand the concept of sovereignty and God's control, and we really love the idea that God is protecting us, but with regards to sharing the gospel and in terms of explaining to people that, hey, love ka rin naman ni Lord, but there are times na may mga bagay na nangyaring di okay. So sir, siguro po nais ko po makarinig ng other approach po probably, or paano po makikipag-usap in a way na hindi naman tayo maging parang arrogant or holier than thou, parang ganun po. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the question. I got to the place where I'm at today because in 2020, I began to see things that were happening. Like I told you kanina, di ba? Sabi ko, iniisip ko 40, 50 years pa tayo. And then I saw things happening in the world. I said, I've never seen this happen ever. Entire nations were running their governments like their entire countries like they were following a script. There's a virus somewhere, and everybody say, okay, lockdown. You stop people from going to work, and they're not allowing this and that treatment. They're not allowing people to go out because they're terrified of this and that. And everybody was following a script. The US did it, China did it. It's like I've never seen it in my life. And so I began to question more and more. I'm sorry, I'm kind of taking a while to get to the answer, but my eyes began to be open as to the possibility that it wasn't 40 or 50 years away. Okay, because most Christians are aware that we're potentially looking at a one world government. We're worried about Antichrist taking over, because we read that in Revelation 13 that he takes over the world, and he's killing people, whoever he wants. He's pushing people to take a mark of the beast, otherwise they will not be able to buy or sell. And so together with us in a group that we formed, Jim mentioned it earlier, Concerned Doctors and Citizens, all we did at the onset was to try and tell people, hey, there's cures. There's very cheap and affordable cures. You had Lianhua, you had ang dami. There's so many cheap cures. Hydroxychloroquine with zinc that was working for COVID. My wife and I both got COVID twice, and we both got well for less than 2,000 pesos, the two of us. So in opposition, we have, let's say, the brothers of Governor Gwen Garcia in Cebu. One brother, I think his hospital bill was 5 point something million. The other brother was 8 point something million, and both died. So it was like we're wondering, both Christians and non-Christians were wondering, why is this happening? Why is no one apparently interested in finding a cheap cure? Why do they keep saying, oh, the vaccines are coming, the vaccines are coming? We've never had a disease where they said, wait for the vaccines. And so it was really strange. And when we saw this apparently synchronized movement, we all, even the non-Christians, saw it, and they were alarmed. They said something's going on here, and that is what led me to start a group on Viber called Fatten the Calf Movement. I began because we do these huddles where we talk about cures, we talk about protocols for getting out of COVID, how to prevent COVID, etc., how to help the vaccine injured. That's what we're actually focused on now, helping the vaccine injured. And so the most of our doctors' cases are involving the vaccine injured. And so when that started happening, I started saying, okay, maybe it's not as far as I thought. Maybe we need to get ready. And people started talking about it's in the news. When they start talking about famine is coming, there's not going to be any food. And then you hear about suddenly, oh, the nitrogen disappears, fertilizer disappears. No one has access to fertilizer. If you don't have fertilizer, you can't plant. Then huge factories in the US huge egg factories are burning down. In farmland is being bought up in Ireland and some other places in the Scandinavian countries. Farmland is being bought up, and the farmers are being told to stop planting. So it was just too much coincidence for me. I'm a pattern guy. I look for patterns in things, and that's how I put things together. And so I said, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen. And so we started Fatten the Calf with the goal of finding like-minded Christians who, and this is an encouraging word from a pastor that teaches on preparation for the end times. He says he believes that the Philippines alone can feed Southeast Asia. The Philippines alone can feed Southeast Asia. My Indian pastor, Indian, I mean, comes from India. He was just telling me how he was telling his father, who's also a pastor, who's about to retire. He says, Dad, you should retire here in the Philippines. Because in the Philippines, you throw a seed out through your window, the next day it's sprouting already. It's just so easy to plant anything here. So that's what inspired this Goshen movement, the Goshen Farm, Goshen Community Movement. What we are seeking to do is teach people how to farm in their own secluded communities, in their own, wherever they choose their Goshen to be. Now, I'm also very conspiratorially minded. I'm thinking Antichrist. I'm thinking drones. I'm thinking, aerial surveillance. And so all of that factors in. But all we're doing in the Goshen community is saying, okay, here's a pastor who's now a farmer, and he'll teach you how to farm. He can cause your produce to increase by leaps and bounds. And so even on a tiny portion of land, 900 square meters, you can produce more than enough for your family. And then this is where I highly recommend YouTube videos, hydroponics, aquaponics, farming. Oh, hey, go nuts on YouTube. There's a lot of good stuff there. But we're all learning from that. We're also looking at energy options. Now, okay, all of that's a very long answer for this. We're building these communities predominantly with Christians first, because we want to be prepared. Should it happen, God forbid it should happen in my lifetime, I wouldn't mind living till I'm 90 plus and dying in my sleep. I'm good with that. But if it should happen that the Antichrist comes before I go, I want to be prepared that the gospel can continue to go out, that people who need to be fed are fed, including my family and anyone who seeks nurture and assistance from us. So when we talk to our future Goshen farmers, we tell them, you are preparing your Goshen farm, not just for yourself and your family. We want you to overproduce so that you have enough to share with others who have not prepared, those who are not ready, those who are seeking refuge. I happen to believe that the Jews will be looking for places to flee from the Antichrist. If they flee to the Philippines, they're welcome. So there are people who the Lord spoke to 15, 20 years ago, said, you prepare because I'm going to send you Jews to hide when the Antichrist comes. So It's that kind of thinking. It's really not just I'm putting my money where my mouth is, in not literally, but I'm I'm planning my life around this, around setting up places, at least assisting people to find places of refuge where everyone will be welcome. Now, the problem with, let me put it this way, the pre-trib friends that I have, pre-trib, for those who are not aware, is a teaching that before the Antichrist is revealed, Jesus comes for you quietly and secretly, and you're spirited away, and you're enjoying the marriage supper of the Lamb in heaven, while all hell is breaking loose, figuratively, or actually literally, on earth. The great tribulation is happening on earth, and the Jews are being massacred, and you're up in heaven. That's the pre-trib view. Unfortunately, I'm not a pre-trib, as you just heard, right? I'm very clearly post-trib, because of scripture. I used to be pre-trib, and then I saw the trumpet verse in the Matthew 24, and I saw it again in Paul's epistle. I said, it's the same trumpet. Jesus is talking about the same trumpet Paul is talking about. So there's no rapture. Sorry, I said it, but the problem with the pre-trib teaching is that that's the teaching that comes across as holier than thou. We're better than you. We'll be out of here. You guys are suffering. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's how it's sounding to them. As in opposition, we guys are saying, we're going to be here to stick it out with you. If you're suffering and we're ready with our Goshen homes, come. Our farms will feed you. Our flocks will feed you. Our poultry will give you eggs. Our lambs will give you ribs. What is it? What is it in lamb cuts? What is it? Whatever. But
They have
that's
ribs.
the whole. Okay.
Yeah, they have ribs.
Okay. So, but what's a special cut on the lamb? Whatever. Anyway, that's my drink too. There you go.
Lamb
Lamb chops.
chop.
There we go.
Lamb chop.
That's it. That's it. So that's the goal. And we're going as far as to explore now how and I will tell you, many of you probably know him, but there's a Christian who already has 5 of these farms in the Philippines. I will not identify him just in case. And he's actually storing seeds. And it is very costly to store seeds. You have to store seeds because you cannot depend on the Antichrist to give you the seeds to keep feeding the people you're not supposed to be feeding, right? If you're in hiding, you cannot come to a supplier and say, I need more rice seeds. No. And I was told just recently that GMO seeds cannot work. GMO plants will not work because apparently they don't produce seeds. So when you're done with your GMO harvest, you have no seeds. You have no new seeds with which to plant the next harvest, the next crop. So that's why these people are storing seeds, and seeds need to be kept where they're dry, flood-proof, moisture-proof, etc. Dry, they need to be kept very well and very safe. So we're going all out. We're not just going to preach it, we're going to live it. When we say we're going to be here for you, we're literally going to be there. Some of you may be surprised to know that we're actually even talking about arms. There is a subgroup we have about self-defense and protection of our Goshen communities, because it will not help anyone if we have all these produce that is supposed to feed the innocent and the helpless, and then a rubber band comes and takes it all away. We need to be ready to defend our people, and we believe very firmly that the Bible teaches self-defense. Right? So we're not talking about aggressive warfare. We're not talking about going to war against the Antichrist. We're only talking about protecting what our people will need to keep eating, and anyone who comes to us for help. So literally, we're going to feed people literally. We hope to shelter them. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Gayaras.
So we have a written question here is, can you tell or share something about the red heifer in Israel that is found in Texas?
Right. They just recently received a shipment, I think it was earlier this year, excuse me, or late last year. They received a brand new shipment of new heifers from Texas. An American breeder was raising them. It's very hard to find the previous batches or the previous heifers that they had eventually develop a spot, and that makes them no good. So they have to have a perfect um, heifer that is spotless. He has to be a particular type. He has to be a particular color, and so there's they're now raising them in Israel as well. The Texan brought them into Israel within the last few months, and he turned them over to the rabbis, and they're making sure that they can continue to produce until they find that heifer. That heifer, if I'm not mistaken, my kind of be I may be problematic here with my memory might be problematic here, but they need the blood of the heifer in order to have the proper temple sacrifice. They're actually rehearsing. They've been rehearsing the animal sacrifice already at the temple. They do it. They even videotape it. You can see it. Um, um, you can see it in the okay. Holy Bangsil has a question in the chat. Can I take that? I know who that is. Okay, Thessalonians. Yeah. No rapture. What about Thessalonians? There is a rapture if you look at it that way. The rapture being when the Son of Man comes from down from the heavens to collect his gather his elect from four corners. That's when that happens. Okay, so that's the rapture, but no escaping the tribulation. If you follow Jesus' teaching in Matthew 24, this is what I call a plain reading of Matthew 24. I'm not asking you to have I'm asking you actually to divest yourself of any preconceived notions about Matthew 24 and read it as though you were the fisherman, Peter, who hasn't never heard about pre-trib teaching, which was only actually developed 130 years ago. It's only 130 years old. So it was not taught in the early church. It's never been taught. It was never taught by the apostles. So Thessalonians, if you read it, put them side by side. Matthew 24 and First Thessalonians, you'll see it's the exact same event. One point after another, it's the same event. Matthew 24, second coming, and First Thessalonians, is it 5 or it's the same event. Twinkling of an eye is the change. It's talking about us in our, if we're still here, Paul says, in our mortal bodies, the dead will rise first, and then in the twinkling of an eye, those of us who are still alive will be transformed. So that's not Jesus coming in the twinkling of an eye. That's us being transformed in the twinkling of an eye. Okay, so you please read the text and read it in context. What happens with many of our pre-trib teachers is they pluck one verse from here, one verse from there, and then they force it into their teaching. That's not the way you do in Bible interpretation. That's not how you read the scripture. You need to read it in the context. Read the flow of the passage. What is it they teach? Read 20 verses before, 20 verses after. If you're going to pluck a text, make sure you read 20 verses before, 20 verses after. If it still makes sense, it still does what it says, what you're thinking, it says, after you've read 20 verses before, 20 verses after, then you're probably good. All right? But you can't do that with 1 Thessalonians 5. Read the entire context. He's talking about the same thing. Rapture, the rapture, so-called rapture, second coming is one. There's only one trumpet sound. And that's the one that collects all of us who are still here. Those who have died. Wasn't that
And
go to the mountains?
after the tribulation.
Yeah, yes.
So he's
When
going to
God
come
descends,
triumphant, and he's going to take all of us, but that's actually after the
correct.
tribulation.
Right.
Oh,
He
okay.
comes down to wipe out the Antichrist, to defeat the Antichrist and all his enemies, all Israel's enemies. And when he comes down from heaven with on the white horse, and there's his robe is dripped in something in blood. His robe is dipped in blood. Dipped in blood. There we go. And he has a banner on his thigh that says King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's coming down with his holy ones. But we're down here. So there's holy ones coming from heaven. That's not us. Okay, we're down here. And that's when it says we'll be in the twinkling of an eye will be transformed, and we have our beautiful immortal bodies where I'll have more hair and I'll be much slimmer. I hope. Okay. Yeah, and I won't have the trouble I have today with my body. So 70 AD, you might have come late, Suzanne, but what we were talking about was, I said it might be dual fulfillment. Until you see the perfect fulfillment, the complete fulfillment of the passage, it cannot be considered completely fulfilled. Otherwise, God made a mistake. And I'm not ready to allow that God makes mistakes. Okay? I don't know if you are. But it may still happen. It will still happen again, rather.
Thank you.
Any more?
Any more questions? You may type it in the Q&A box. Oh, I guess they understood everything that you have
They're
said,
shy.
Oh, there's
Brother
one.
Mary.
There's one.
Okay.
Can you read that, Mrs. Alan Paulo?
All
I
right.
can
The
read.
question is, will Christians also experience God's wrath outpouring on earth, or will we be raptured before then?
The wrath is not intended for man. That's also in the epistles. We are not destined for wrath. So wrath is something that God pours out upon those who have rejected Him. The Great Tribulation is not a great punishment of the saints. It's a testing time. It's a time to test your faith. And what better way to test? I believe we made a serious mistake in World War II when the Christians did not do more for the Jews when they were being persecuted and slaughtered. We could have done a lot more. So I believe God is giving us a second chance. Before that can happen again, God is going to call us and say, wait a minute. No, he's not going to say that exactly, but God is going to give us this chance to do better this the second time around. So it's not a time that He will punish us because we are not destined for wrath, but it is a time for testing us and our faith. Because it is the testing of faith that produces all of these wonderful traits, right? And so that's how His bride becomes perfect. You don't have a perfect bride that, it just boom, and I'm sorry, but as hard, as difficult as it is to go through tribulation in our personal lives, the most painful times in your life can also be the most spiritually fruitful. Personally, that's how I feel. I've been through agonizing hurt. I'm sure many of you have been through worse, and I'm probably exaggerating mine. But I've learned so much, and most importantly, I learned to trust in God so much more. Now, that's what the intention of God is not that you're going, He's not out to fail you. Okay. It's not like a pass kind of fail kind of thing. No, He will keep you. That's the reason why I had those verses, the promises verses there, to remind you that God who began a good work in you, He will be faithful to complete it. It's not on us. It's not on Mari. If I'm going to depend on Mari, goodbye. Forget it. I'm going to fail. I can guarantee you I'll fail. What we're doing is we're putting our faith in God. That's what it's all about. So the wrath is not intended for us. It's punishment for those who reject Him. If you read Revelation, it is awful to see. These people have already been given clear signs that God is who He is, and yet they continue to reject Him. They refuse. He's already sending them all kinds of punishment from heaven, and He said, "No, we reject you." That's how evil and how hard-hearted they are. They're the ones who are going to be punished, not us. Now, that's not to say that some of us will not get caught up in the wrath of the Antichrist, because he will be beheading people. There will be martyrs. But one of the videos I really had trouble watching. It was so painful to watch. And I'm speaking as someone who used to debate Muslims. I've debated Muslims online for 10 years. It is actually Muslims who are converted to Christianity who are the most bold, the most courageous, the most loving of God, the most dedicated, the most committed, more than me. Okay, I've been 30 plus years in the Lord. They beat me hands down. They are ready to take so much for God because they're so thrilled to have been saved. They are so grateful to God for their salvation. That's our problem where we live, okay? We're the only Christian nation in Asia. Oh, we live such cushy lives compared to these people. The minute you are caught converting from Islam, you're dead. If you're a woman, you will be raped. If you're a man, you'll be raped. That's the kind of life you face converting from out of Islam. Yet these are Christians who are saying, we're ready to die. We're ready to shed our blood for Jesus. Give God an army of 100 like this, you'll turn the world around. You'll turn the world upside down for sure. Imagine for people who are, because usually the converts are the most jealous, that's them. They are actually prepared. They're preparing their hearts, they're preparing their lives now. We're willing to give all for Christ. We don't care what it's going to cost us. We're ready. Such faith, such amazing faith. We should all be embarrassed.
Thank you very much, Brother Mary. There's another question here, specifically the seven trumpets. We will not go through them.
I believe we will. We will have to go through all the bowls, etc. The seals, the bowls, etc. I've not ever done, and I want to develop more the Exodus theme. I just found that so beautiful, how they're so perfectly preserved. But again, some of us will have that kind of, like I'm telling my mom. My mom's 95, about to turn 96, and she's saying, "I'm going to go through tribulation." And I'm saying, maybe not, mom, because if we're in that Goshen place somehow that God preserves her, preserves us. Myself, on the other hand, I'm so visible. Okay, it's not going to be hard to find me. All right, so I can hide, mom, but I'll be out doing stuff, and maybe I'll get martyred. I don't know, but the point is that some of us, and I'm going to say, if you're not ready to be martyred, you won't be. You hear me? Because if you're not ready in your heart to die for the Lord, He's not going to make you go through it. Okay, because it's an issue of you. That's me. That's me. That's not. I'm not saying that comes from the Bible. That's all me. Okay. It's just that it's He's that kind of God for me, that He will prepare your heart. If you're one of those who's going to go through martyrdom, you're going to be one of those who's going to suffer, then He'll prepare you for it. He did it with Paul. He did it with all of His apostles. Not one of them did not suffer. Did I answer the question? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The seals and trumpets, yes. But either we will be preserved, but definitely there will be some amongst us who will be martyred.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. May I know if the Antichrist is now born? Is he from Europe?
I have no idea if he's been born. I suspect he has been. I'm not one who believes in the Roman. Actually, I believe in the Islamic Antichrist. I'm from the Islamic Antichrist school. Like I said, I was debating masters for 10 years. I had to study Islam. And I've never seen a religion that more clearly echoes the stuff that the Antichrist does. There's only one religion on the planet that mandates beheading. Mandates beheading. It's Islam. Cut them off at the neck, strike them at the neck. That is a mandate from Islam. So you don't see Roman Catholicism doing that. You don't see Presbyterians doing that. You don't see Baptists doing that, right? It's only, you don't even see, well, Hindus, some Hindus do, yeah, but it's not in their religion. It's in Islam. It's actually in the writings of Muhammad. It's there. It's in the Quran. And so, coming from that Islamic school, I'm sorry, what was the question again? I got lost. we
The
lose the question.
Antichrist has been born, and if it's
Oh, okay.
from
Okay, yeah,
he's from
right.
Europe.
If he's European.
Yeah.
He could be European, he could be Filipino. I have no idea, but the bottom line is, I believe he will be definitely the Islamic Antichrist, mainly because of First John 2 and Second John. I could be mixing that up. First John 4, First John 4, Second John 2, where John, who is the only the only Bible author who talks about the Antichrist and names him. It's actually John who names him, and it's John who describes him and describes what he teaches. He's against the Trinity. He's against the Father and the Son. That is Islam. You don't have the Roman Catholics teaching against the Trinity. You don't have the Hindus. Oh, sorry, the Hindus. You don't have the Baptists. You don't have the Presbyterians. Again, you don't have them teaching against the Trinity. That is very clearly a teaching of the Antichrist. He will reject the Trinity. He will reject Father and Son. He will reject Jesus as God in oneness, in unity with the Father and the Spirit. So I don't know if he's European, but definitely, if you look at what John wrote, you'll get a better idea of what he will teach.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here. Sir Mary, does it mean tribulation is different from God's wrath?
No, God will pour out. The great tribulation, as I mentioned, is a testing of man, testing of the believers. The wrath is what will be poured out upon the sinners, those who reject Christ. Uh, even despite going through the tribulation, they'll be going tribulation. We're being tested by the tribulation. They're going through all kinds of. It's going to be painful for them. It's not going to be. I don't believe it's going to be as bad for us because hopefully we'll be in Goshen, Goshen, in our personal Goshen or in our actual Goshen. Maybe I should explain that. Just again, the Islamic Antichrist position sees the Bible as is Israel centric. It's Jerusalem centric. So when you see scriptures talking about all the nations, all the world, what our position is that it's referring to the nations around Israel, all of whom are Islamic, all of whom are Arab Islamic nations, or sorry, not just Arab, but Islamic nations. So when the Bible talks about all the nations around it going to war against Jerusalem, that is Psalm 83. You could practically pick up a newspaper in an Islamic country, and you'll be reading Psalm 83 verses like, "Let's wipe Israel out, so that therefore they're never remembered again." That's language from Psalm 83. It is so. So when we talk about all the nations coming against Israel, all the nations, we're not talking about Singapore. Why would Singapore send an army against Israel? That doesn't make any sense at all, right? So why would all these Switzerland? Switzerland's going to send an army against Israel. Makes no sense. But the Islamic nations all gathered around Israel, all 1.2 billion, 1.6 billion Muslims are just their entire teaching focuses on wiping out Israel and the U.S. U.S. is the great Satan, Israel is the little Satan. They cannot exist happily or at peace for as long to the extent that Islam can have peace until they wipe out Israel. Fundamental teaching that nowhere exists in any other religion. So again, it makes total sense.
Brother
Correct.
Mari, what's the best way for us to follow your work?
Um, I
Where
don't
do
do
we
this on a
go?
regular basis, but I will be. I just have the. I don't have a ministry. Okay, I'm just on the Samurai Club. My Facebook is practically useless because I'm in jail more than I'm not. I am probably the most throttled, the most what is it, shadow banned Filipino. I don't know. Maybe there's others more than me, but I usually post on my Facebook, and now I'm on Twitter, which is free. I mean, as free as in free speech. They still allow. So I'm there. That's a good place to find me. Twitter. Um, and I can't remember what my handle is, but I'm the only Marikaima there as far as I know. Just spell my name right, you'll find me.
Well, I think over the last year or so, a lot of really positive things are happening on that platform, Twitter.
Yes.
And it's probably at this point, I mean, obviously different perspectives, some that you're going to like,
Correct.
some that you're not going to like.
Right.
That's the nature of the free speech platform. But I think of all the platforms existing today, it's probably the largest one where they really have a commitment to
Free
free
speech. Correct.
speech. And I think there's lots of creativity going on in that platform. So maybe we can all sign up for Twitter and follow you there.
Yes, please. Join us there.
All right. Are there more questions? Going one.
Thank you for keeping the questions easy.
Going once, twice. Okay. Are there more questions?
I've been always curious about this. So before the return of Christ, those who have gone before that, What does the Bible say about where these people are?
That's a very good question. I'm sorry, it's not one I've studied in depth. Um, there's a um, there's the belief that well, Paul says, "Absent from the body, present with the Lord." That's where I'm going to go. That's probably the safest way. There's some who believe in soul sleep. I'm not one of those, um, but I believe with Paul, absent from the body, present with the Lord. So immediately, you're in His presence. That's what I believe. But I can't support it other than from that until I do more study.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, here's another question.
Oh, there.
Yeah, here we go. Why did the Bible say people will mourn if Jesus will come? We as a Christian should be happy and with great joy, diba?
Depends what passage you're talking about. Are you talking about Zechariah uh, 12 or 14, or are you talking about Revelation? If it talks about, if you're talking about Zechariah, it's talking about Israel. Israel is going to be saved in the end, and whereas they've rejected the Messiah till so far, when they finally see him for who he is, they will accept him. So they will mourn as though we've lost this only son. He's been so far away from us all this time, and here he is. He's been all the time. It turns out. So and that's for sure a salvation passage, because Zechariah talks about God pouring out His Spirit on them, the Spirit of supplication. Spirit is I can't remember exactly, but we just read it. But it's, if God pours out His Spirit on you, you're headed for salvation. You're headed for forgiveness. You're headed for a turnaround, a conversion for sure. So it depends which passage you're referring to. Those who are not wanting to see Him come will definitely mourn, because they've rebelled against Him. Those who are rejecting Him are rebelling against Him. They see Him coming. Oh no, it's true. Oh, I forgot to mention that there's two witnesses in Revelation 11 who preach for, I don't remember how many days, but they're preaching and the whole world sees them. Everybody knows that they're preaching, and then suddenly they're killed by the Antichrist, and their bodies are left to rot, and then finally God raises them up and brings them to Himself. And so they've been preaching, and it never occurred to me to think, what are they preaching? They're preaching Jesus. So if the whole world reaches their message reaches the whole world, that's another way that God can fulfill the Matthew 24 verse of the gospel shall be preached in all the world. So the people who reject that message will be the ones who mourn. It will
That
prove
really
it.
reminds me of the last part of the Chronicles of Narnia, which is the last book, which is the last battle, and all of it's at the end of times is what it is, and all of every creature who was alive at the time would run, and they would be confronted with Aslan, who's God in this case, and those who loved him, right? They were so pleased to see him, and they were so overjoyed when they found him so beautiful.
Right.
And those who hated God, they became insensible, and then they were furious, and they were so angry, and they were so frightened, and then they ran off into darkness.
Right. Exactly.
So such a it's such something, God is something so beautiful, and the other, all of a sudden now everything is darkness because of the hatred of God that was in their heart.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you. It's wonderful.
Okay, do we have more questions coming? No more? Oh, there's another one. All right, it says, Matthew 24:30, all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds. I believe that is the other verse. The unbelievers will mourn because of remorse when they finally see Christ and realize they have been wrong to reject him. But it'll be too late for them to repent. That's my take on from
Right.
Myra Jalik
Halike.
Jalik Halike.
Halike. Right. Thank you, Pastor Mayra. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly. That's right. It's good to have pastoral backup. Always.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other questions? Any more questions? Okay. Oh, there is another one.
From the
Oh,
same.
is
Oh,
she was
Well,
just
wow.
thanking, yeah.
well,
It was just thanking. Or she was just saying welcome. All right.
Well, Mari, any final
Words.
thoughts, message, words?
I hope that more of us, because about 85%, I think, that's just off the top of my head, of the Christians in the Philippines are pre-trib. This is really what we grew up with. We grew up hearing. And the concern in our hearts is that if we're not prepared for the for the for the church to go through tribulation, then we might be among those who fall away. That was a concern that was aired first by one of our senior pastors. If all that the Filipino church is hearing is about the pre-trib rapture, and it doesn't happen, will the church be ready? Will the church fall away? How much of the church will fall away? And so I would put it this way: if it's pre-trib and the great tribulation, if the great tribulation happens in your pre-trib, then you need to be ready. If you're mid-trib and the tribulation happens, you still need to be ready. Now, the post-trib, if it's pre-trib, I'm good. Either way, okay? Because I'm going. I'm going with you if it's pre-trib. But at least I'll be ready either way. And people who are with me in being ready and prepared for anything. And the bottom line really is God can take care of you. God can take care of any one of us, no matter what you're going through. God is able. So it's all really about Him and how good He is and how loving He is, how faithful He is, how committed He is to you and me. It's just amazing, this God that we serve. It's just amazing. So thank you for the opportunity to St. Stephen's. Thank you very much, Margaret and Jim and everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you still okay to answer this last question?
Sure.
Pahabol, last na.
May
Sure, sure.
pahabol. Okay, what is the answer to our title question? Is the Lord really coming
be
soon?
coming soon.
Uh, to be honest, I'm hoping that we get a delay because we're really not quite ready, especially the Philippines. Nonetheless, there are people who are preparing. There's talk about about the central bank digital currency, and I don't know how you want, if you want to talk about that, but there are ways to close you down, to shut you down, and the concern is that it shuts down the church. My concern is that it shuts down the church. If it shuts down the church, the message isn't getting out. The gospel isn't being preached. So if you're familiar with the Great Reset, they were talking about three types of lockdown. The Great Reset was talking about the COVID lockdown, climate change lockdown, and the final was the internet lockdown. So we've already been through the COVID lockdown. We're probably, you could say we're still pretty much in the COVID lockdown, especially in the Philippines, now that they're talking about Baguio's already going back to mask mandates. The next one is the climate change lockdown. You're seeing that now in the exorbitant prices of gasoline and fuel in general. Because you can't afford to drive your car anymore, that's practically locking you in your home. You're forced to take public transport where you have to put your mask in. You're back to limited freedom. So again, that's one kind of lockdown. And they're going for more. They're not happy with what they've done so far. We Filipinos have been, we Metro Manilans and some other Philippine cities have been through the color coding. They're talking about that in Europe now, and they're calling it 15-minute cities. where you won't be allowed to drive your car within a certain part of the city, and you'll only be allowed to drive during certain times unless you get a permit. So again, you bought a car, but you can't drive it unless you first get a permit. That's not free. You're not free to use your car, right? So that's part of the climate change lockdown. And the final one is the internet lockdown. Everybody now is on the internet, pretty much. Church is on the internet. If the wrong side gets a hold of the internet, says we're going to lock you down, what happens to all the online churches? What happens to all the online ministries? What happens to everyone who is now ministering online, who's keeping in touch with the underground church online? What happens? We need to be ready. We need to get our act together. And so I would say we're close. Going back to answering the question, it sure feels like we're close, but I would really love for if the Lord could give us more time.
Mm. Yeah.
The brother,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I almost mentioned his name. The brother who's got 5 farms, he's all set. He's good.
To me, I feel like it's so close. Yeah, it's close.
Okay, there's another one here.
Daming
What?
pahabol,
Yeah,
Mari.
dami pa. What's your thoughts about AI?
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
That is scary. It is scary stuff. And if you have somebody like Elon Musk warning you about it, you should even be more scared because it's a guy who's very, very much aware of and is part of developing AI. I've been arguing with some people who say that AI is how the Antichrist will take over the world. I really don't think so. That's not my reading of Revelation. It's not my reading of Tribulation. I see the final battle as being one of the superpowers, the supernatural powers, God versus Satan. So whether Satan will say, oh, I'll use technology, it's like, really? God can wipe out the technology just like this, you know? So I think it's really a battle between the two supernatural forces. Of course, we already know who's going to win, but that's what they're going to do. So the devil doesn't need AI. Will he use it? Maybe. But I don't think so. I really think it's going to be it's going to be the worst. If we think the it's evil now, if you've seen the stuff about the UN that's coming out now, it's going to be even worse. They're talking about sex education for our children. So it's worse than sex education. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's really terrible. It's terrible. So definitely we want to say Maranatha because God forbid it should get worse. But the promise is it's going to get worse. So yeah, I believe it's close.
Okay, there's just some encouragement here shared by GL. He's saying thank you. God to prepare our hearts to go through the tribulation. God's grace is sufficient.
Amen.
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 Mm.
Amen.
Well, I think Judy here has the same. She's saying the
Same
same
question.
question with about AI. So the
Or
Lord will not tarry. She's saying. Thank you
Amen.
very much.
Thank you for the opportunity once again.
Thank you
Yes.
so much, Mari.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope those who raised their questions, you're satisfied with the answers we got from Brother Mary. So, well, we wish to answer all your questions. Maybe some are unspoken, but our brother Mary here has told us
Twitter.
earlier that we can reach him through Twitter.
Twitter,
All
yeah,
right.
or Facebook.
So,
I'm still there.
mhm.
That's easier.
Okay. So
You
it's
wanna
getting late.
them fatten the calf, Viber
That's it.
group.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. So again, thank you very much,
Thank you. My
Brother
pleasure.
Mary Kaima, for being so generous with your time.
Pleasure always.
Okay. So to end our webinar, let us request our IIT head, Pastor Angelo Gutierrez, to close us in prayer.
And let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity that you've given us and have Mr. Kaimo share with us about his knowledge and understanding concerning what you have set in eternity, concerning what will happen in the last days. May this short talk and message make us more hopeful rather than fearful of what lies ahead of us. You are the only true and living God who is sovereign over all things. To grant us, Father, more passion to do your will and to set aside consistent time to study your word. Help us, O Lord, to trust in your holy word, in your faithfulness, and also in your steadfast love for your people. May your grace continually be with us as we look forward to the day that we will be with you for the rest of eternity. May you bless Mr. Kaimo and his family, Father, and bless all of us as we ponder upon these things for the building and encouragement of your people. These we ask in Jesus' name.
Amen and amen.
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 Thank you,
you.
Pastor.
Thank you, Pastor.
To everyone who joined us tonight, thank you so much for sparing your time. Praying that we will all be confident meeting our Lord when He returns to
Amen.
take us all home with Him in His kingdom. So, yeah, I suppose everyone was encouraged. As Pastor said, we have to be hopeful than fearful.
Amen.
Okay, so good night, everyone. Have
Good
a
night.
restful evening. Thank you so much again,
Alright.
Brother
You,
Kaimo.
Pastor
Thank
you, brother.
Myra pala, she was with us for the Lead Like Jesus retreat last November.
Pastor
Yes,
Myra.
ma'am. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. So, asan? Parang she wants to talk. You should,
Oh, we're doing a seminar in Pangasinan with Pastor Myra and Pastor John.
Oh, yes. Okay. And I think she shared Second Thessalonians 2:8. The man of lawlessness will be revealed,
Mm.
but the Lord Jesus will kill him with the breath of his mouth and destroy him by the splendor of his coming. Thank you. Good night and God
Good
bless
Night.
everyone.
night.
God bless.
Thank
You.
you, everyone. God
You.
bless.